we have gone through this mind map. No, don't want subtitles. Gone through this mind map and what all of this is. So I'm going to skip right on through. You can watch the other video for that. Make sure you know this though. Otherwise, we're going to go through a few vocab words that you made. You should have a PowerPoint or Google Sheets, Google Slides on this, so you can go through your own as long as you did well on it. If you didn't do as well, you can watch this. So this is Kaylee's. She rocked this. She did a great job on this. First word is nationalism. Nationalism is when they think that their country or their nation, look at the root word on this, is better than everyone else's. And a little bit of this is good. Having pride is good, but this is beyond pride where they think the other countries are not worthy, not as good. And it kind of leads to this, which is imperialism. Imperialism is when you want control. A country wants control over other countries, or they may even want to take over that country, conquer the world kind of thing. There's an old cartoon called Pinky and the Brain, and they always wanted to take over the world. They were imperialists. Militarism is wanting a bigger, stronger military. It's heavily related to an arms race. When you want bigger, stronger weapons. Again, if George comes to a fight with his fists and Bill comes to a fight with a stick, they're going to have to go back and forth getting bigger weapons because they don't want to lose, right? So an arms race isn't with two people going to a fight. It's with countries, though, where they want bigger, stronger arms. Arms are guns, and guns are arms. Alliances is just kind of having a deal that, hey, I've got your back if you have my back. A lot of times they do trade, but specifically in this case with World War I, an alliance is a big deal because when the first guy, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, got assassinated, one country retaliated, and they had all their friends had to go to war then too. And so all of a sudden it was a world war because of the alliances, the agreement that they would have each other's backs. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, he was going to be the next heir to the throne, and he was assassinated by the Black Hand. Again, the group had like 5 different characters try to kill him, and they all failed until the last one kind of got lucky when the car backed into an alleyway out of complete randomness, and he was able to shoot Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife. So his assassination led to World War I. That's the big thing you need to know. The Lusitania. We had Lucy sinking, the Lusitania. This is the boat, British passenger ship. 1,200 people died when this went down. 128 of them were Americans. This kind of got Americans thinking, we're not really happy about this. We want to stay isolationists. We want to stay by ourselves and stay neutral in the war. But they got kind of ticked off with this. So an isolationist is somebody who isolates or wants to stay by themselves, or a country that wants to stay by themselves. We were on the other side of the ocean. We didn't want to get involved. We wanted to be neutral, which means we're not picking a side. And the Lusitania sinking challenged those beliefs. The Zimmerman telegram. This was a coded letter that you guys tried to decode an example sent from Germany to Mexico saying, hey, we want the United States to stay neutral, but we don't think it's going to happen. If the United States goes to war, we want you to help us fight the United States. And in return, we'll give you the lands that you lost, which was New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas. We'll help you get those back, and we'll pay for your war. Mexico thought about it, and they're like, probably not a good idea because we're going to have to buy weapons from the United States. And the United States probably isn't going to say, yes, Mexico, here are some weapons that you can fight me with. Doesn't make sense. So Mexico said, no thanks. And the United States said, hey, guess what? We're going to go to war now. The Lusitania sinking, along with 5 other passenger ships. And then the Zimmerman telegram, they'd kind of had enough of Germany, so they decided to jump in and go to war also. So this was sent from Germany to Mexico, and it went Western Union telegram, which happened to go through Europe. I believe it was London. And so if I'm going to send a message to a friend about an enemy, I'm not going to pass the message to the enemy to have them give it to my friend. And that's what Germany did. It was pretty dumb. So Zimmerman telegram helped instigate getting the United States involved. A U-boat is a fancy name for a submarine. They're primarily used by Germany in World War I. A Zeppelin is like a hot air balloon. Doesn't look like this. This is a modern hot air balloon. The Zeppelins used in World War One, they looked quite a bit different, but they basically just hot air balloons that they would drop bombs from. And again, primarily used by Germany. Biplane, just an airplane with a lower wing and an upper wing, used in war really for the first time. If you had two biplanes fighting, they called it a dog fight. A tank, not a water tank, an armored vehicle with a big gun, right? You guys know what tanks are. Poisonous gas used in war. It's descriptive. You know what that means, but it was used in war for one of the first times. So a tank and poisonous gas, those would be two new weapons used in war. Another one would be artillery. I don't know if we have artillery in here. Machine guns would be another weapon, but artillery are giant cannons, basically. You think about artillery shells with fireworks, and they have big, huge bombs that you drop in to shoot, and it blasts it out. Artillery is similar to that, big, huge guns. And then machine guns shoot a ton of bullets really, really fast. There's our artillery. There's your example. This is more modern artillery by far. Theirs was more of one big cannon looking thing. Woodrow Wilson kept us out of war. In 1914, when World War I started, we stayed an isolationist. We stayed neutral. And after the Lusitania, after the Zimmerman telegram, he said, we need to go to war, and Congress backed him up a few days later, and we went to war. He later came up with the 14 points. You're going to need to know that also. He kept us out of war. He also came up with the 14 points. You don't need to know what they are. We had a brief lesson on that, but basically it was how we were going to get past the war and have a peaceful world beyond that. His goal was that there would never be another world war, and he said if the United States wasn't part of the League of Nations was one of the things that it called for, a group of countries that were united in trying to protect other countries from being invaded. He said if the United States did not join the League of Nations, that there would be another world war within, what did he say, within 20 years? And sure enough, within like a decade and a half, World War II broke out, and we did not join the League of Nations, as he had said. He campaigned pretty hard for that and ended up getting a stroke out on the road, basically, not on a physical road, but out while campaigning for the League of Nations. General John J. Pershing is the first 6-star and only 6-star general in the United States history. Yes, his wife and 3 of his kids were killed in a San Francisco house fire. One of his sons, 5-year-old, survived, and he kind of dedicated his life to the military after that. So he became a 6-star general eventually, and he was the leader of the Expeditionary Forces, which is the name of the forces behind the United States. He didn't want to just farm out some soldiers to different countries. He wanted a United States Army that was separate, that would go in and would fight alongside of those, but a separate U.S. Army. Another individual that's not on here that you're going to need to know, though, is Alvin York. Alvin York was the gentleman. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. I thought he was in here. Pull up my teaching folder and jump on in. I'll pull up the picture of Alvin York. Alvin York Heroes. This is Alvin York right here. He was the gentleman who is from Tennessee. He got in bar fights as a little bit of a drunkard and changed his life around, gave his life to Jesus, and tried to get out of the war. When he was drafted, he wrote 3 different letters. Wrote an initial letter saying, this goes against my conscience, goes against my religion, I don't want to fight. The United States government said too bad. He wrote 2 more appeals letters, 2 more letters trying to get out of it, and eventually he finally gave in. His commander kind of helped him through navigating the Bible, saying that no, killing is okay, murder is not okay. In fact, Jesus said in the New Testament, if you don't have a sword, take up your sword. Not literally what Jesus meant, but they kind of use it out of context. Regardless, big thing with Alvin York is his leading commanders died in war while they were in battle, which meant that on site he had to step up and take the lead. And they were down to 7 United States soldiers against a lot of Germans with machine guns higher up on a hill, and he killed 20 of them And then he had 6 of them rush at him with their guns and bayonets to kill him. And he had a handgun. He pulled out a pistol and he shot. He had 7 bullets, killed all 6 of them. Then another gentleman, the leader of the German battalion, the German crew, came at him to kill him, shot a whole bunch of times and missed, and ran out of bullets, and didn't realize that Alvin York, I believe, was out of bullets this time, and tried to surrender to Alvin York. And Alvin York said, here's the deal, I'm going to kill you unless you call off this entire attack and have all of the Germans in this battle surrender. And so he blew his whistle, and they had 132 German soldiers surrender to Alvin York and to the other 6 men fighting alongside of him. Pretty incredible. He got the Congressional Medal of Honor, I believe, for his efforts. Pretty outstanding individual. Susan B. Anthony is, let's see if we can find a few other things. Let's see. Here we go. Bulletin board. We went through Zimmerman telegram, machine guns, U-boats, poisonous gas. This is Uncle Sam. He is a sign used for the draft. So the draft was the short name, but the Selective Service Act is a name you're going to need to know for the test. The Selective Service Act was Congress's law that made everyone 21 to 30 register for the draft. So the draft, the Selective Service Act. They selected men for service. There's Woodrow Wilson. Trench warfare. So in the Revolutionary War, they'd form a line. They'd walk up to their enemies. I shoot, you shoot, I shoot, you shoot, until everybody's dead, basically. Pretty dumb way of fighting. Trench warfare, people dug trenches and hid. They lived in terrible conditions that we talked about for a while. There was no man's land in between because no man could survive where there was barbed wire and just shooting from both sides. Pretty miserable place. This is the Russian Tsar, C-Z-A-R. Sometimes it's spelled T-Z-A-R. This is Tsar Nicholas II, who was assassinated in his own home. They came and got him and his wife and daughters and killed him, and they went from being a monarchy, which is ruled by one family as a king and queen, to being communists, where the government owns everything and people are pretty much paid the same. Model Ts are new. That'd be a new vehicle. The Peace Treaty of Versailles is what it looks like, but it's Peace Treaty of Versailles. Versailles is how you pronounce it. So Treaty of Versailles called for an armistice or ceasefire. They're no longer going to fight. League of Nations was formed that kind of helped try to solve problems peacefully. One of the biggest problems with this peace treaty, with all of this, was they made Germany pay reparations, or made them pay for the war, basically, and it crippled Germany's economy and led to World War II. There's our Lusitania. There's our arms race. This is a dogfight. There's Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Biplanes. Prohibition, we didn't talk about that. We'll get to that in the 1920s. There are Zeppelins, more from that age. Tanks. Alvin York. John J. Pershing. Susan B. Anthony. We talked about her just a little bit. She was a social reformer, which meant she wanted change with some of society's rules. She really wanted to get women the right to vote. She's on the U.S. dollar. This is a bunch of propaganda. Propaganda is the same as advertisements. The United States was not united around going to war, so Woodrow Wilson hired this guy. His name is George Creel. George Creel was hired to come up with this propaganda along with movies and all sorts of other things that made it look like we need to go to war. So you'll need to know a few ways that the United States helped with the war effort. We had wheatless days. We had meatless days. We had don't drive, don't waste any oil that day. We had create victory gardens. That way you can eat your own food, send stuff over to soldiers overseas. And that was the point of all those less days, the meatless, wheatless, oil-less whatever. The idea was we're sending our goods overseas to the soldiers who need it, and so support yourself for one day. They also did Liberty bonds, or government savings bonds. Liberty bonds is probably the best word for it. Um, they they loaned the United States money, and I believe the average citizen owed or loaned the United States government $8,600 in today's money. The average citizen, which is insane, with war bonds or Liberty bonds. So the United States could borrow their money and then pay it back after the war was over. We also talked about women not wearing corsets because it took some metal. They ended up making 3 battleships out of the metal that they saved with the corsets. Lots of other ways too that hopefully you can remember the United States helped serve in the war effort. That is the gist of the test. I'll see if there's anything else that we're going to need, and I will post if so. Good luck, happy studying.